Talk to Her by Denise Gow. Read by Jiggy Bhore. At the risk of sounding very non-PC, I should admit I am a carnivore. That's right, always have been. Raised on New Zealand lamb chops and lots of bacon sarnies. We're told that eating red meat is needed for iron in the blood. I think it's essential for irony in the humours. But sadly, no bacon sarnies for me at the moment, as very recently I began reforming. You see, I used to think of myself as a maverick, a rule breaker, but that person seems to have disappeared. In fact, I've hardly strayed from the straightened path, apart from feeding white bread to the ducks, and none of them have died, thank goodness. But it's more than that. I've lost my way, meaning, let myself go since Joe died. A gran without a cause, who's become stuck in being Ms. Goody-Goody, kind of an ageing hippie girl, but without the sex, which perhaps is just as well. This change of identity was only brought home to me recently. In fact, it all began with the baking of a vegan cake. I'd been waiting for my girls to come for the weekend, faffed around a lot with the dusting like you do, well, like some do, and promising not to put my foot in it this time. No rows over politics and the B word, which came to dominate our world, like the C word used to. Now the P word's completely taken over our lives, and E for the environment, which might be even worse. Guess we'll soon have the whole alphabet to cope with. This time, I vowed to cross my fingers behind my back if politics were mentioned, as I don't like rows and would like to see more of my daughter and granddaughter. And without our men, we need the support of each other. When they arrived, they just stood the other side of the kitchen table, like we'd all but forgotten about hugging. "Come here," I said, and we did it, even though my daughter had blue hair. And I couldn't believe how much my little Jessie had changed. Looked so grown up with her hair all plaited and braided. So different from when I last saw her. She talked a lot about renewing the Youth Strike for Climate campaign. Going on strike on Fridays. For me, it's Fish Fridays, me and Jill Coker are always first in the queue. She's had her hair permed and she's wearing pink trainers. Won't stop her dying. She likes crabs. Unlike my girls, who are both vegetarians. "We're going to save the planet from extinction. Reverse what the oldies have done," Jessie said while waving my rolling pin about. "Good show," I said. Not for 1 minute counting myself among the oldies. "Well, we know where that's all coming from, don't we?" I said to Pippa. My daughter rolled her eyes, looking like she'd heard enough of it, but muttered something about it all being a good thing. "Jessie's gone vegan too," Pippa said. "Are you still eating beef?" Jessie asked me straight out. I took the rolling pin out of her hand. Pippa papered over a smile. I said, "Well, yes, occasionally, very occasionally. Mostly I eat chicken and loads of vegetables, of course. I grow some during the summer, but they're all gone now, even the frozen runner beans. Shame I can't grow them as cheaply as the farmer can." "It's okay, Mum. We've brought extra veg," Pippa piped in. "I was planning to bake a cake," I said, "but think we'll need to go to the supermarket to pick up extra things for a vegan one." "Carrots? And obviously no palm oil," I said, keeping a straight face. Jessica beamed at me, and soon we were off. But as I pottered around the store looking for those essentials, there were problems. Butter was frowned upon. That's lovely grass-fed butter coming from Ireland. Then, as we passed the meat counter, my trolley kind of took off like Alexa had grabbed control of the wheels. But then I spied Jessie's fingers on the push bar and noticed her piercing eyes. I quickly headed off for the household department, much safer there. But when I picked up some cling film, Jessie almost snatched it out of my hand. "No, you can't use that, Granny." "Oh," I said, only just realising it was made of plastic. "Silly me. I'll get some extra tin foil," I said. "You can get wraps made of beeswax now," she said. Have you got some, Pippa? Yes, my daughter said, wearing that long-suffering look again. She was tired, poor dear, and I thought I'd get her alone when we got back, have a talk. Were you a hippie? Jessie asked as we moved quickly past the deli counter. Well, kind of, but not the full thing. I glanced at my daughter. I wore Bieber dresses and occasionally some flowers in my hair, but mostly it seemed to be going on elsewhere or in the films. Pippa winked at me. Bieber dresses are worth a fortune these days. Don't think I've kept any, I said, daring to put my arm on her shoulder in a public place. This Greta girl has made such an impression on the youngsters, especially Jessie, Pippa said, raising her eyebrows like she does. Pretty girl, I added. She's brave, strong. What point are looks when you have inner confidence, Jessie said. I nodded, but she's right. As we moved around the store, I hoped I didn't look as desperate as I felt. I wanted to get out of there quickly before I made another faux pas. I resolved to be a lot more aware with my purchases in the future. Outside it had begun to rain, sitting on the beach was out, so we went straight home. When we got back to the house, I caught a moment to be with my daughter. We kicked off our shoes. Pippa sat down and sighed. She'd change her name to Greta if she could. Wish she'd been around when I was young, she said. We were influenced by people in our day. At least you didn't have the let-it-all-hang-out role models I had, I said, trying to put a light spin on things. No, at least I know the father of my child, she blurted. That's the hippie bit I mentioned. I nearly bit my tongue. I thought we'd buried all that. I wanted to hit back with, but he didn't stay with you, did he? Luckily, I felt an inner melting and said the right thing. I'm sorry he didn't stay. It's made things so hard for you. I'm okay, Mum. But I could tell she was putting on a brave face. I knew things were tough for her, trying to pay the rent so high in London. I dreamed of being able to give her more so she could put down a decent deposit, but hadn't found a way so far. I'm not ready to downsize yet. That wasn't the chat I'd planned. So I shuffled off into the kitchen and Pippa went to be with Jessie. I thought they'd settle with their computers, iPads, whatever, which I used to complain about. Rather hoped they would become absorbed while I settled into the baking, which can be so peaceful. Instead, they came into the kitchen and watched over me like a couple of hawks, seeing what went into the cake. I got into a bit of a spin as I was following a new recipe. Baking a real cake has always been my fail-safe to put the world right. A little sweetness, but with no eggs. How would it rise? And maybe her bones would break if she ate no dairy. Joe used to love my cakes, and he was a good stepfather to Pippa. Whenever we had problems with her, he would say, "Talk to her, don't back off." Still miss him. I was close to crying. Pippa noticed. "We'll get our knitting out," she said. Jessie's face brightened. That wasn't what I was expecting. Knitting? Knitting a nice woolen jumper, I said. They both looked at me. "We can't afford those expensive designer ones, so we're knitting our own, with bamboo yarn," Jessie said. Oh, yes, I see. But I just couldn't help myself. What will the pandas do if we run out of bamboo? A chance to share a light-hearted moment. Pippa put down her knitting. This has to be better than those ghastly fleece things. Those microbits the fishes eat, I said quickly, getting back on side. It was pure luck I wasn't wearing mine, as it gets so cold in my north-facing kitchen. You know, if anyone had come along to take a photograph with me baking a cake and the girls sitting in the conservatory knitting, you'd think this was family bliss. We had banned the bomb and there was Greenham Common, you know. Even if I was only doing the singing, I said. Both their faces looked quizzical. Cruise missiles parked on our island. And it worked, didn't it, Mum? We can't leave it to the politicians anymore. It's our lives, our future, the planet's, Jessie said, looking so old. The politicians just lie, Pippa said. The general truth decay, I've heard said. They laughed, but went quiet. Well, you'll have to continue to band together and hope the planet doesn't get angry. I started beating the cake mixture really hard, and some lumps splattered out of the bowl onto my best woolen jumper. Kill the oceans and we'll choke to death. We have to take action before the earth vomits us off, they said, each trying to outdo the other, then carried on knitting. So there was the picture of us saving the planet, me cooking vegan and the girls knitting for glory. But I wish I felt easier about it all. I know I've got to make changes, but not all in one weekend. I ended up wanting to shout, is there any room for love? But I didn't have the courage. After they'd gone, I nibbled at chocolate, plenty of it. Found some hemp milk Jessie had left behind and wondered if that might get me high. Can't imagine so if it was bought in the local supermarket. But you never know with the way things are changing. Guess that's what it was like for the Victorians when they suddenly had those speeding trains and hissing steam to contend with. So, what's happening now? There'll be no more pushover granny, that's for sure. I've just heard about a march that'll be happening locally, once we're allowed out again. And they want some aged agitators. Going to join them, see what I can do. Nice to think I haven't squandered all my anarchistic dreams. May need to wear a special cap and logo. Why not? Time to get with the programme. The regeneration programme. Reduce my carbon footprint and my waistline while baring our breasts for cancer. Well, with some decorous scarves. And the girls are coming back. We're going to clear plastic waste from the beaches, rescue the fishes and some crabs. I could end up an eco-martyr. Watch out. Be an aged agitator, me. And you?